Good evening, everyone. Before the stories begin, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. The more you engage, the more these chilling tales will return to your feed. Now, let's step into the dark together. When I first moved to Portland for college, I didn't have much of a choice about where to live. Dorms were expensive, and the only way I could afford it was by finding someone who already had an apartment and needed a roommate. That's how I met Corey. He was a local, 22, working part-time at some auto shop and going to community college nearby. The guy seemed chill at first. He had that laid-back vibe, always cracking dumb jokes, offering me a beer after class, calling me roomie, like we'd been friends forever. And I'll admit, it felt nice having someone around when I was new in town and didn't know a soul. The first couple of weeks were fine. We hung out, watched football, and even threw a small party. But then Corey started changing. It wasn't obvious at first. Little things like he always wanted to know where I was going, who I was with, when I'd be back. He'd text me constantly if I didn't answer. And if I came home late, he'd be waiting up, sitting in the recliner in the living room with the TV off, just staring. I'd joke about it like, "Dude, you're acting like my mom." And he'd laugh. But his eyes never really matched the laugh. The real problem started when I met Emily. She was in one of my classes and we clicked pretty fast. A few coffee dates turned into hanging out every other night, and before long I was spending more time at her place than my own. Corey didn't take it well. The first time I brought her over, he was weirdly cold, didn't shake her hand, barely said hi. Later, when she left, he asked me, "You think she's really into you, man?" She seemed fake. I brushed it off, but it stuck with me. The texts got worse after that. If I didn't answer him while I was with her, he'd blow up my phone. Once, when I ignored him for a few hours, I came back to the apartment and found every single one of my drawers pulled open, clothes scattered everywhere. Corey was sitting at the kitchen table, spinning a knife between his fingers, saying, "Man, I thought maybe someone broke in." Scared the heck out of me. I laughed nervously, but deep down, I knew something wasn't right. One night, Emily drove me back to the apartment, and as we were about to head inside, she froze. I asked what was wrong, and she pointed at the upstairs window. Corey was standing there in the dark, not moving, just staring down at us. No light behind him, no wave, nothing. Just a silhouette that didn't break eye contact until we went inside. When I asked him about it later, he said, "I was just making sure you got home safe." That night I couldn't sleep. I heard footsteps pacing the hallway outside my room for hours. The breaking point came a week later. Emily and I decided to spend the night at her place. I thought nothing of it, just texted Corey that I'd be out. The next morning, I came back to grab a few things before class. The apartment door was wide open. At first, I thought maybe Corey left in a rush, but when I stepped inside, every single picture on the walls had been flipped upside down. My stomach dropped. The air felt wrong, heavy, like the apartment itself was holding its breath. Then I noticed something worse. My bedroom door was closed, but from underneath it, I saw the light was on. I hadn't left it like that. Slowly, I pushed it open. Everything was gone. Not stolen, not destroyed, just gone. My bed stripped bare, desk cleared, posters ripped down. And in the middle of the empty room on the hardwood floor was a single object. Emily's necklace. The one she always wore but had lost a few days earlier. That's when I realized Corey wasn't just being weird or overbearing. He was watching us, following us, and now he was sending a message. I backed out of the room, heart pounding. But before I could leave, I heard the bathroom door creak open down the hall, and Corey stepped out, shirtless, eyes wide, smiling like he'd been waiting for me all night. The smile didn't fade. If anything, it widened when he saw me frozen there, like my fear was exactly what he'd been waiting for. "You're back early," he whispered, voice raspy, too calm for how heavy his breathing was. I tried to sound firm, but my voice cracked. "What happened to my room, Corey?" He leaned against the bathroom door frame, chest rising and falling like he'd been holding his breath for hours. His eyes flicked down to the floor where Emily's necklace lay. "I thought you'd like a clean slate, a reset. You don't need all that junk in there. It was cluttering your head, cluttering us." The way he said "us" made my skin crawl. I took a cautious step back. He shifted just enough to remind me he was between me and the front door. Not blocking me outright, but close enough that I knew if I tried to bolt, he'd be on me in a second. "We're supposed to be brothers," he said. "But ever since she came around, it's like you don't even see me. You don't get it, do you? Emily's not real. She's fake. I'm the one who's been here. I'm the one who watches out for you." "Corey, listen," I said, my voice shaking. "I'm tired. I'm not in the mood for this. I'm leaving, and when I come back tomorrow, we'll talk." His hand shot out, gripping my shoulder like a vice. The pressure was enough to dig into bone. His smile was gone now, replaced with a hollow, cold stare. "Don't you ever turn your back on me again." I shoved him hard, adrenaline pushing through the fear. He stumbled back against the wall, and for a split second, I thought I had my chance. But then his face twisted into something animalistic, his lips pulling back like he was baring teeth. "You're not leaving," he growled. He lunged. His fist came down so close to my head that it punched straight through the drywall, leaving a jagged hole. Dust sprayed across my face. That was it. I ran. I sprinted down the hall, through the living room, heart hammering so loud I could barely hear behind me. Corey's footsteps thundered, heavy and fast. His ragged breaths echoed like snarls. I yanked the door open and tore outside, barefoot on the cold pavement. The night air hit me like ice, but I didn't stop. I raced across the parking lot, lungs burning, gravel biting into my feet. "Don't run from me," he shouted, voice booming behind me. I risked a glance back. He was on the apartment steps, silhouetted by the light, eyes glinting, arms spread wide like he owned me. He didn't chase further. He didn't need to. The way he stood there, shirtless in the dark, smiling faintly, was worse than if he had tackled me. Because in his right hand, dangling casually, was Emily's necklace. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed at Emily's, every shadow outside her window making me jump. In the morning, I called the landlord, stammering about an incident, about feeling unsafe. The landlord didn't argue. He just sighed like he already knew Corey was trouble. He agreed to let me out of my lease if I cleared my things that day. Emily's dad came with us, insisting I wasn't going back alone. But when we pushed the apartment door open, everything looked normal. Too normal. My bed was made, clothes folded, posters back up. The flipped pictures I'd seen were straightened again. The empty room was full, like nothing had been touched. Corey's room was stripped bare. No clothes, no food in the fridge, no toothbrush, no shoes by the door. He had moved out completely. The landlord swore Corey dropped off his keys earlier that morning. Said he had no forwarding address, no phone number. Just gone. But the necklace was missing. For a while, I convinced myself I had imagined half of it, that maybe I'd overreacted. Maybe Corey was unstable but not dangerous. I almost let myself believe that. Then 2 months later, Emily's phone buzzed at midnight. Unknown number, no text, just an image. Her necklace lying on a bathroom sink. The chain curled perfectly into a circle, almost staged. And in the mirror behind it, blurred but unmistakable, was the reflection of a figure standing just out of frame, bare chest visible. The message beneath it read, "Brothers don't keep secrets." Emily dropped the phone like it was burning her skin. I picked it up, staring at the picture until my vision blurred. It was real. Too real. I changed my number the next morning. We both did. We moved apartments miles away. I even called the cops, but what could I say? My ex-roommate sent us a creepy picture. They wrote it off as domestic drama. And yet, every so often, I swear I feel eyes on me in public, in the grocery store, at the gas station. Once, at night, I saw a figure in a hoodie standing at the far end of Emily's block, unmoving. By the time I worked up the nerve to look twice, he was gone. I don't know where Corey is. I don't know what he wants. All I know is he wasn't lying that night in the hallway when he said he wouldn't let me turn my back on him. Because no matter where I go, no matter how much time passes, it feels like he's still right behind me. When I was 10 years old, growing up in a small town in southern Indiana, my best friend in the world was a kid named Travis. We lived 2 houses apart, rode the same school bus, and spent almost every afternoon together in the woods behind our neighborhood. Back then, he felt like a brother. But Travis was strange. He had this way of turning innocent games into something darker. Hide and seek turned into stalking. Make-believe turned into threats. One summer, he found a dead raccoon on the side of the road and made me stand there with him until the flies covered its body. He whispered, "Nothing ever really dies. It just waits." I laughed it off at the time, but it stuck with me. The worst moment came one evening when we were sitting in his backyard, fireflies blinking all around us. He pulled out a pocket knife, nicked his palm, and told me to do the same. "Blood brothers," he said, "forever and ever, and if you ever break it, you'll regret it." I was a dumb kid. I went along with it. We pressed our palms together, and he stared at me with a grin I'll never forget, like I had just signed a contract with the devil. By the time high school rolled around, I started pulling away. Travis didn't have many other friends, and when I drifted off, he got bitter. He'd write notes and leave them in my locker. We made a promise. He'd call my house and hang up when my mom answered. Eventually, I stopped talking to him altogether. After graduation, I moved out of town and never looked back. 15 years passed. I built a decent life for myself in Chicago, had a good job, a steady girlfriend, an apartment that didn't smell like mildew. I hadn't thought about Travis in years until last summer. Started small. A friend request on Facebook from an account with no profile picture, just the name Travis. My stomach turned when I saw it. I didn't accept it, just ignored it. But the next day, another message appeared in my inbox. "We're still brothers." I blocked the account immediately. A week later, I got a handwritten letter in the mail at my apartment. No return address. The handwriting was jagged, childlike, almost carved into the page. It read, "Blood doesn't forget. I'm coming to collect." That's when I knew he had found me. At first, I thought maybe it was a prank, or maybe someone else from back home was messing with me. But then I started noticing little things. My car keys moved from the hook by the door to the coffee table. My toothbrush wet in the morning when I hadn't used it yet. And one night, I came home to find the deadbolt on my apartment door unlocked. I told myself I was just paranoid, but deep down I knew Travis was here. The breaking point came late one Friday. My girlfriend Marissa and I had ordered pizza and were sitting on the couch watching a movie. She got up to grab a drink, and when she opened the fridge, she froze. "What the heck is this?" she asked. I walked over, and there on the top shelf, laid neatly across a plate, was a piece of paper. In thick red marker, it said, "Bring her too." Marissa looked at me like I had staged the whole thing. I tried to explain, but how do you explain a childhood nightmare that crawled back into your life 15 years later? That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the building made me sit up in bed, listening. At 3 a.m., I finally got up, went to the window, and pulled back the blinds. Across the street, standing under a flickering street light, was a figure. Skinny, tall, motionless. Even from that distance, I knew it was Travis. He didn't wave, didn't call out. He just stood there under the street light, head tilted slightly like he was studying me. I froze, blinds still pinched in my fingers. By the time I blinked, the street light flickered again and he was gone. I didn't sleep after that. I sat on the couch with a baseball bat until the sun came up. Marissa thought I was losing it, but when I told her what I saw, she didn't argue. She looked scared, too, even if she didn't want to admit it. The next morning, we went down to the building's lobby. Taped to my mailbox was another piece of paper. This one was folded, but when I opened it, my stomach turned. Inside was a Polaroid photo of Marissa, taken through our living room window while she was sitting on the couch eating pizza. On the back, in that same jagged handwriting, were the words, "Blood brothers keep their promises." That was the moment I realized Travis wasn't just haunting me. He was already inside my life. We went to the police, of course. I showed them the letter, the photo, explained the childhood connection. They listened, took notes, but the look in their eyes told me everything. They thought it was just an old friend messing around. "Block his number, change your locks," they said, as if that would stop him. That night, Marissa begged me to stay somewhere else, maybe a hotel. But I had this sick feeling that running wouldn't help. If Travis had found me once, he'd find me again. So we stayed. We double-locked the door, pushed a chair under the knob, and left every light on. Sometime after midnight, I drifted off on the couch. When I opened my eyes again, the clock read 2:47 a.m., and the apartment was silent. Too silent. The hum of the fridge, the faint traffic outside, all gone. I sat up, heart pounding. The chair was still under the doorknob. The locks were still in place. But in the center of the living room floor was something that hadn't been there when I fell asleep. Pocket knife. Rusty, small, the same kind Travis used the night we made the pact as kids. Marissa stirred awake beside me. She saw the knife, covered her mouth, and whispered, "How did that get here?" Before I could answer, a voice came from the shadows of the hallway. "You still owe me." Travis stepped forward. His hair was longer now, greasy, hanging in his face. His clothes were filthy, like he hadn't washed in weeks. But his eyes, they were the same as when we were kids. Wide, hungry. I grabbed the bat, holding it up between us. "Get out, Travis. I'm calling the cops." He laughed. Not loud, but enough to chill my blood. "You already did. And what happened?" "Nothing. They don't care. Nobody cares. Only me. I'm the one who's always cared about you." He took another step closer, and I swear his grin split wider. "We promised each other forever. And forever doesn't end just because you got a girlfriend." Marissa stood, her voice shaking. "Leave or I'll scream." Travis's eyes flicked to her. "She doesn't belong in this. She can't be part of what we started." He reached down, picked up the knife, and held it out, blade glinting under the living room light. "But she can watch." That was enough. I swung the bat as hard as I could, connected with his shoulder, sending him stumbling back into the wall. He didn't cry out, didn't even look hurt. He just laughed harder, clutching the knife in his fist. I screamed at Marissa to run. She bolted past him into the hallway, and I charged after her. The bat slipped from my sweaty hands, clattering on the floor. Travis's footsteps pounded behind us as we tore down the stairwell, every echo making it sound like he was inches away. We burst through the front doors into the street. The night air hit my lungs like fire. Marissa flagged down a passing car. The driver slammed on the brakes as we ran in front of the headlights. Behind us, Travis stopped at the doorway, standing just inside like he couldn't cross some invisible line. He raised the knife to his palm, sliced it open in one quick motion, and smeared the blood across his chest. His voice carried across the street, steady and calm. "Blood doesn't forget. I'll find you again." The driver threw the doors open, screaming at us to get in. We piled into the back seat, gasping for air. Tyler jammed the keys into the ignition but didn't start it. He was staring into the rearview mirror. "What are you doing?" I demanded. "They don't always stay," he said. I followed his gaze. In the reflection, sitting in the bed of the truck, was the figure, and it was still smiling. We never went back to that apartment. Packed our things during the day with movers and left Chicago completely. I don't tell people where I live now. I don't keep a routine. I check my locks 3 times every night. But sometimes I still get letters. No return address, no stamp. Just slipped under the door. No matter where I move, always the same words. Blood doesn't forget. When you're 21 and restless, it doesn't take much to convince you that the open road has all the answers. I had just finished a 2-year community college program in Illinois. Didn't know if I wanted to transfer to a university or just start working, and I felt stuck. That's when my friend Jake pitched me the idea that would change everything. "Let's take a road trip," he said. "No plan, no timeline, just the country in front of us." Jake wasn't the kind of friend you said no to. He was magnetic, tall, scruffy, quick with jokes, always the loudest voice in the room. He made people feel like life was more exciting when he was around. And me, I was quiet, cautious, always second-guessing myself. Maybe that's why I agreed. Maybe I thought if I tagged along, some of his energy would rub off on me. We set out in his beat-up Jeep Cherokee with 2 sleeping bags, a cooler, a tent, and his old Polaroid camera that he carried everywhere. The plan, if you could even call it that, was to start in Illinois, cut south into Texas, then head west through New Mexico and Arizona before finishing in California. At first, it was exactly the kind of freedom I thought I needed. Windows down, classic rock blasting, stopping at greasy diners along the way. Jake snapped photos of everything. Me eating fries, the Jeep parked by an empty field, even random strangers who didn't know they were in the frame. But a week in, I started noticing things that didn't sit right. It began in Missouri. We pulled into a little diner off the highway, the kind that still had checkered floors and booths covered in duct tape. Jake insisted we sit in the back corner. He kept glancing at the door, barely touching his food. When the waitress asked if we were passing through, Jake smiled and said, "No, we're looking for the quiet spots, places nobody bothers to go." She didn't laugh, just gave us a strange look and left. Later, when I teased him about being paranoid, Jake leaned across the table and said, "You ever notice how people size you up when you walk into a room? Like they're deciding whether you belong or not. I don't like that. Out on the road, it's just you and the person beside you. That's real. That's honest." The way he said it made me uneasy, but I let it go. A couple of nights later, we stopped at a rundown gas station somewhere in Oklahoma. It was nearly midnight, and the place looked like it hadn't been updated since the 70s. One flickering fluorescent bulb buzzed above the door, and the clerk behind the counter didn't say a word when I went in for snacks. When I came back out, Jake was leaning on the Jeep, talking low to the clerk who had stepped outside. The man kept nodding, avoiding my eyes. When Jake noticed me watching, He ended the conversation abruptly, climbed back into the driver's seat, and drove off without a word. "Who was that guy?" I asked. "Just asking for directions," he said with a grin. "But we had GPS. And besides, the way the man wouldn't even look at me, like Jake had told him something he shouldn't repeat, gnawed at me the rest of the night." By the time we reached northern Texas, the trip had shifted. Jake stopped using the GPS entirely. He'd pull off onto back roads that weren't on the map, weaving us deeper into countryside that felt abandoned. When I asked where we were headed, he'd just smirk and say, "Trust me, man, you'll love it." But the more miles we put behind us, the less I trusted him. The turning point came one evening after hours of driving dirt roads that seemed to lead nowhere. The sun was setting, bleeding orange across the flat horizon, when Jake finally pulled into a clearing surrounded by dense trees. No houses, no signs, no cell service, just an empty patch of earth with tire ruts like someone had been here before. "Perfect spot," Jake said. Hopping out like this was what he'd been aiming for all along. We set up camp. Jake built a fire while I unrolled my sleeping bag. He kept snapping Polaroids, me stoking the fire, the Jeep under the moonlight, my face half lit by the flames. I tried to laugh it off, but it was starting to feel less like a road trip and more like I was some kind of subject in one of his projects. When I crawled into my bag that night, something crinkled under my hand. I reached inside and pulled it out. Polaroid photo. It was me, taken from across the fire pit while I'd been talking to him earlier. My head turned mid-sentence, mouth open, unaware. I sat up, staring at it in the firelight. "When did you put this in here?" I asked. Jake just smiled. "Keepsakes." He didn't explain, and I didn't press. But sleep didn't come easy that night. I kept listening to the trees creak, the fire crackle, the sound of Jake's breathing just outside his tent. When I woke at dawn, the fire was out. The clearing was silent, and Jake was gone. Panic gripped me until I spotted him crouched by the Jeep, running his fingers along the tires. I walked closer and my stomach dropped. All 4 tires were slashed. Not punctured, slashed clean through. "What the heck happened?" I asked, heart pounding. Jake stood, wiping the blade of his pocket knife on his jeans. He didn't look surprised, didn't look angry. He just grinned. "Guess we'll be here a while." That's when it hit me. He hadn't brought me on this trip to see the country. He had brought me here to isolate me. And now we were stranded. Jake didn't flinch. The knife dangled in his hand. His grin calm, too calm, like he'd been waiting for me to finally understand. I forced my voice steady. "Why the heck would you do this? We're stuck here." He stepped closer, shaking his head slowly. "No, you're stuck. I've never felt more free. Out here, it's just you and me. No noise, no people, no distractions. Don't you see how perfect this is?" I backed away, heart pounding, but his eyes followed me like a predator. All day he kept me under that stare. He didn't eat, didn't sleep, just sat by the fire pit snapping Polaroids whenever I moved. Me drinking water, me staring into the trees, me with fear written all over my face. By dusk, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my bag and started down the dirt road, determined to reach somewhere, anywhere. I'd barely gone 100 feet before Jake came running behind me. He slammed into my shoulder, spun me around, and hissed in my ear, "You don't walk away from me. Not now. Not ever." His grip was so tight I thought my arm would snap. I shoved him off, shouting, "We're not friends anymore, Jake. You've lost your darn mind." For the first time, his smile cracked. His expression emptied out, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Maybe I lost my mind years ago, but you're the only one who stayed. You owe me." That night, I zipped myself inside my tent, but all I heard was the crunch of his boots circling, circling. Every few minutes, click. The Polaroid shutter snapped in the dark. At some point, exhaustion dragged me under. When I woke at dawn, my tent zipper was open. On my chest was a neat stack of Polaroids. Me sleeping, taken from inches away. My stomach lurched. He'd been right over me all night. I stumbled out, shaking, and he was gone. His gear, too. Just the Jeep's burned-out shell and the endless woods. I thought maybe I had a chance. I started walking down the dirt road, faster and faster, until I was almost running. The silence was crushing. Then I saw it. Pinned to a tree ahead with Jake's knife was a Polaroid of me. From behind, walking that same road. It had been taken just minutes earlier. I spun around, scanning the trees. Nothing. Just the faint creak of branches. I ran. I didn't care where. My chest heaved, branches clawing at my face, until the trees broke open into a clearing. My heart stopped. It was the same clearing. The Jeep, the fire pit, my tent. And Jake, standing beside the wreck, smiling wider than ever. The camera lifted. Click. I screamed and tore into the woods again, sprinting until my lungs felt like fire. Somehow, by pure luck, the dirt gave way to asphalt. A truck driver spotted me staggering on the roadside and hauled me into his cab. When I told him what happened, he looked at me like I was crazy, but took me straight to the sheriff's office. They drove me back out there. The Jeep was still there, but now it was blackened, burned to a shell. No tent, no Polaroids, no Jake. The sheriff muttered something about vandals and told me to be glad I was alive. But it wasn't over. A week later, back home, a package showed up at my apartment. No return address. Inside was a stack of Polaroids. Every single moment from that trip. Me eating, me sleeping, me terrified. The last photo made my stomach twist. It was me in my own bedroom, unpacking my bag, taken through the window, and across the bottom, in Jake's messy handwriting, 3 words were scrawled, "Still on the trip. When you live alone in a small house, silence becomes your closest companion." I gotten used to it. The quiet evenings after work, cooking for one, falling asleep with the TV buzzing in the background. It wasn't exciting, but it was safe. That safety cracked the night Ryan called me. We'd been coworkers for a year. Not close, but close enough to share lunch breaks and complain about the boss. Ryan was charming in that way people who've always gotten by on charm can be. But he also had this edge, a temper that flared whenever he felt disrespected. I'd seen him go off on customers, on other coworkers, even on a vending machine once when it ate his dollar. So when he called me at nearly midnight, voice shaking, saying his girlfriend had kicked him out and he had nowhere to go, I hesitated. "Just for a few nights," he begged. "I don't have anyone else, man. Please." Against my better judgment, I said yes. First, it wasn't bad. He crashed on my couch, kept mostly to himself. I felt good about helping him out. But by the 3rd night, I came home to find him cooking in my kitchen, humming to himself like he owned the place. "Hope you don't mind," he said, sliding a plate toward me. Figure I'd pull my weight. I laughed it off, but the next morning my routine was different. My toothbrush was wet when I went to use it. My towel was damp, hanging in the wrong spot. Little things. By the end of the week, he'd moved into the spare bedroom without asking. His stuff, clothes, shoes, boxes appeared overnight, stacked neatly against the wall. "Couch was killing my back," he said casually, as if it had been decided for both of us. I didn't argue. Not yet. Over the next few days, Ryan started changing the house. He rearranged the furniture in the living room, put his own photos on the fridge, replaced my coffee with some brand he liked better. Every time I came home, something else was different. "Looks better this way, don't you think?" he'd ask. The first real scare came on a Friday night. I got home late from work, exhausted, and went straight to bed. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to the sound of footsteps in the hallway. Slow, steady. I thought maybe Ryan was getting a drink, until the steps stopped right outside my bedroom door. I held my breath, staring at the ceiling. The floor creaked once, twice, like someone shifting their weight, then silence. I waited what felt like an hour before I finally got up and yanked the door open. The hallway was empty, but on the floor, leaning against the wall opposite my door, was a photo frame from my living room shelf. Inside was a picture of me at a family barbecue years ago. Ryan had taken it out and placed it there. The next morning, he acted like nothing had happened. He made pancakes, asked how I'd slept. When I confronted him, he smiled like I was overreacting. "You're paranoid, man. Maybe you did it in your sleep." By the second week, I wanted him gone. I told him straight up, "Ryan, it's time. You need to find another place." He just looked at me, fork frozen halfway to his mouth. Then he set it down slowly, smiled, and said, "Why would I leave? This feels like home." That night, I stayed up late, scrolling apartment listings for him, trying to figure out how to push harder without a fight. Around 3 o'clock in the morning, I went to the kitchen for water. That's when I heard it. Faint noises from the basement. My house didn't have much down there, just a washer, dryer, and old storage boxes. Nobody went down there. But when I crept to the basement door, I saw a strip of light bleeding out from underneath. Someone was down there. And when I leaned closer, I heard Ryan's voice, low and steady, talking to himself. First, I thought maybe he was on the phone. But as I pressed my ear against the door, I realized there was no pause, no response, just him murmuring words in this rhythmic way, like he was rehearsing something. I opened the door as quietly as I could and peered down. A single bulb swung on a wire, casting shadows across the basement. Ryan was sitting cross-legged on the concrete floor, surrounded by my old storage boxes. But what froze me wasn't him sitting there. It was what he had done to the space. The boxes had been pushed aside. A mattress lay on the floor with blankets. Along the walls, he had pinned photos of me. Polaroids, snapshots, even pictures printed from my Facebook. Me at work, me at the grocery store, me sitting on the couch. Some of them I didn't even remember being taken. And in the middle of the floor, right in front of him, was the barbecue photo he'd left outside my bedroom. He was staring at it, whispering, "Home. This is home. We're safe here." Over and over. My breath caught in my throat. The floor creaked under me. His head snapped up. "You weren't supposed to see this yet," he said calmly. His face was lit from below by the bare bulb, and the look in his eyes was empty. Not embarrassed, not scared, just resolved. I slammed the door and locked it, my heart pounding, and bolted for my room. I stuffed a bag, grabbed my keys, and went for the front door, only to find the locks changed. The key in my hand didn't fit anymore. That's when Ryan's voice floated up from the basement, louder now. "You think you can leave? You're part of this. You're the reason this place finally feels alive." The basement door rattled as he hit it from below. Once, twice, then silence. I backed into the living room, my bag still clutched tight, trying to figure out if I could break a window and get out. That's when I noticed something I hadn't before. The hallway closet door, slightly ajar. I pulled it open and nearly dropped my bag. Inside, the wall at the back had been cut open. Behind it was a crawl space big enough for a person. Inside were blankets, water bottles, and more Polaroids. All of me sleeping. The sound of footsteps creaked upstairs. Obey, obey, obey. I snapped. I dropped the guitar, shoved Marcus, and screamed for them to get out. But instead of anger, Marcus just smiled. It's in you now. You'll see. That night, I barely slept, ears still echoing with their chants. By the time I drifted into uneasy dreams, I could still hear Marcus's voice in my head. Don't leave. But I did. The next morning, I packed a bag, left my apartment, and crashed at a friend's place across town. I blocked Marcus's number, deleted every social account, tried to scrub him out of my life. It almost worked until the package arrived. Plain brown envelope, no return address. Inside was a CD unlabeled. Against every instinct, I put it in my laptop. The sound that poured out made my blood run cold. It was me, my voice, recorded while I screamed into Marcus's mic. Layered under the noise was his whisper, repeating over and over like a curse. You'll always be part of the band. I've never been the kind of guy who makes friends easily. Growing up, I was the quiet kid in the back of the class, the one teachers forgot was there. Even as an adult, I've always kept to myself. Work, home, repeat. My circle was small and I liked it that way. That's probably why I trusted Alex. We met at a job I had in Cincinnati. He wasn't flashy, not like Marcus from my high school days. Alex was soft-spoken, thoughtful, the type of guy who always seemed to know when someone was struggling. He noticed things other people didn't. If you were tired, he'd ask if you'd been sleeping. If you seemed upset, he'd check in. People liked him because he listened, and I needed someone like that. That year had been brutal. Breakup, stress at work, my mom in the hospital. I felt like I was sinking. Alex was the only person who reached out, more than a hang in their text. He'd invite me over, cook dinner, and sit across from me at his kitchen table, saying, "Tell me everything, no judgment." First, it was a relief. I unloaded about my breakup, my fears about money, even childhood stuff I hadn't thought about in years. Alex never interrupted, never mocked, never acted bored. He just listened, nodding slowly like a therapist. But after a while, the way he listened started to feel different. He began finishing my sentences, predicting what I'd say before I said it. Once, when I admitted I hadn't been sleeping, he smiled and said, "I know. I could hear you pacing at 3 o'clock in the morning." That stopped me cold. His apartment was across town. "How would you know that?" I asked. He shrugged, smiling in that calm way. "I just know you, better than you think." The next week, I noticed my phone battery draining fast. When I checked the settings, an app one didn't remember downloading was running in the background, recording audio. I deleted it, but the pit in my stomach told me Alex had something to do with it. I told myself I was being paranoid, but paranoia only grows when it keeps being proven right. One night, I came home to find an envelope slid under my door. Inside were pages, printed transcripts, conversations I'd had with Alex, word for word. Even the pauses, the sighs, the little things I thought were private. I called him in a panic, voice shaking. He answered on the first ring. "You weren't supposed to find those yet," he said calmly. "But maybe it's better this way. Now you know how much I care. I don't want to miss anything you say. I want to keep you safe from yourself." My throat went dry. "You've been recording me?" "Not just recording," he said. "I've been studying. Every word, every thought. You think you're lost, but I see the patterns. I can fix you." I hung up, heart pounding. But that wasn't the end. The next morning, when I logged into my work computer, my desktop background was changed. It was a picture of me sitting at Alex's kitchen table, talking. Except I remembered that night clearly. He'd never taken a picture. That evening, he showed up at my door uninvited, holding a notebook thick with pages. "I've been keeping track," he said, handing it to me like a gift. Inside were detailed notes, dates, times, moods, exact quotes. Every time I'd vented, every moment I'd broken down, catalogued in his neat handwriting. "You don't need therapy," Alex said softly. "You need me, because I already know you better than anyone ever will." I wanted to slam the door, to throw the notebook back in his face, but I froze. His eyes were calm, too calm. That night I couldn't sleep because the question gnawed at me. How much did Alex actually know? And what was he planning to do with it? I tried to convince myself Alex was just eccentric, maybe even well-meaning but misguided. That notebook, those transcripts, they were disturbing, yes, but maybe he thought he was helping. I wanted to believe that, but then I started noticing the little intrusions that no friend should ever make. My alarm clock would be reset to times I didn't remember setting. Food I'd left in the fridge was gone. Containers rearranged in a way I never would have touched them. Sometimes when I walked into my apartment, there was the faintest whiff of his cologne, as if he had been there minutes before. One night, after another sleepless stretch, I snapped and asked him outright at work, "Are you coming into my apartment?" Alex didn't deny it. He just tilted his head like I'd asked him if the sky was blue. "I can't help you if I don't see the whole picture. Sometimes you hide things from me. I can't let that happen." I stared at him, horrified. "That's not friendship. That's insane." He smiled softly. "You say insane. I say invested." That night, I barricaded my door with furniture, convinced he had a key. Around 3 o'clock in the morning, I woke to the sound of scratching. Metal on metal. Someone was testing the lock. My heart pounded as I held my breath, praying he wouldn't get in. The scratching stopped after a minute, but I didn't sleep again. The next morning, my barricade was still in place, the door untouched. For a moment, I wondered if I had dreamed it, but on my kitchen table, in neat handwriting, was a note. "You don't need to hide from me. I'm the only one who understands." I went to HR the next day, desperate. They called Alex in for a meeting. I didn't hear what was said, but he left the building that afternoon with a calm expression, even waving at me before walking out the door. I thought it was over. 2 nights later, my phone rang at 2:14 a.m. The caller ID was blocked. I answered, and all I heard was my own voice. Recordings of me venting to Alex, layered and distorted, repeating over and over. "I'm broken. I need help. I can't do this alone." I threw the phone across the room, my chest heaving. When I turned back toward the bed, my blood ran cold. There was a shadow in the corner. Alex stepped forward, calm as ever, holding that same notebook, now twice as thick. "You weren't supposed to fight me on this," he whispered. "But that's okay. Denial is normal. I'll stay until you see the truth." I scrambled for the door, but he moved faster, slamming it shut behind him. His voice dropped lower, more intimate. "Everything you've ever said to me is in here. Every weakness, every fear. I could ruin you with a single page. But I don't want to. I just want you to let me finish fixing you." That's when I realized what this really was. Alex didn't just want to help me. He didn't even want to control me. He wanted to become me. He leaned in close, his eyes wide and unblinking. "I've been practicing your voice. Did you know that? I could answer your calls, your emails. No one would know the difference. You wouldn't even have to exist anymore. I could do it better, cleaner, stronger." I shoved him hard enough to knock him off balance and bolted through the door. I didn't stop running until I was in my car, speeding toward the interstate, hands trembling on the wheel. I changed my number the next day, moved out of my apartment, quit my job. But last week, a package showed up at my new address. No return label. Inside was another notebook, heavier than the last. On the very first page, in Alex's neat handwriting, was a line that made my stomach turn. "You can run, but I'll always be taking notes." When I reconnected with Danielle, it felt like fate. We hadn't seen each other since high school in Indianapolis, back when we were inseparable. Two girls with matching notebooks, trading secrets in the cafeteria, and sneaking out to watch horror movies in her dad's basement. Life moved on. I went to college. She didn't. I got married, had a kid. Last year, I moved back to Indiana to be closer to my parents after the divorce. And one night, out of nowhere, Danielle sent me a Facebook message. "You're back. We need to hang out like the old days." I remembered her as wild but fun. I thought maybe I needed that. We met for coffee and it was easy at first, almost too easy. She remembered everything. My favorite songs, the way I used to doodle stars in my margins, the teacher I hated. She laughed about the boys who used to bother me and said, "I always protected you. Remember?" When she offered to watch my son Caleb a few times so I could run errands, it felt like a blessing. I was juggling work, school pickup, bedtime, exhaustion. Having someone I trusted from my past helping out made sense. The first time it went fine. I came home, Caleb was asleep. Danielle was on the couch watching TV like she lived there. She gave me a smile, handed me the baby monitor, and said, "He's an angel. You're lucky." But the second time, something was off. When I got home, Danielle was sitting on Caleb's floor in the dark. No lights, no music, no phone. Just her, cross-legged on the carpet while Caleb slept in his bed. Her eyes flicked up at me, calm and glassy. "He doesn't like sleeping alone. I keep watch." I laughed nervously, told her she didn't need to do that, but she just smiled and whispered, "That's what you always said, too." I brushed it off. But the next morning, Caleb asked me, "Mom, why do I have to play the secret game?" My stomach tightened. "What game?" He shrugged. "The one Danielle showed me where I don't tell you the rules." She said, "You wouldn't like them." I tried to keep my face calm, but my hands shook as I buttered his toast. I told myself kids make things up. But Caleb was only 5 and he didn't lie about games. That night, I searched his room while he was asleep. Under his pillow, I found a folded scrap of paper in Danielle's handwriting. Rule 1. Never tell Mom what we do. Rule 2. When you hear tapping on the window, it's me. Let me in. Rule 3. If Mom tries to stop the game, she disappears. My blood went cold. I confronted Danielle the next day, furious. She didn't deny it. She just smirked and said, "Kids need structure. I had to teach him the way I taught you." I snapped, telling her to stay away from my son, from my house, from me. She looked at me with that same glassy calm and said something I'll never forget. "Don't you remember? Back then, when we used to practice the game in my dad's basement. You always broke the rules, so I had to punish you. You cried, but you stayed. You always stayed." I swear my knees almost buckled. I don't remember that. Not exactly. But when she said it, fragments came rushing back. Nights where I couldn't leave her house. Times she'd whisper rules I had to follow. The shame when I disappointed her. And now she was teaching Caleb. I cut her off completely, blocked her number, deleted her online. But that didn't stop it. 2 nights later, Caleb came running into my room at 2 a.m., whispering, "Mom, She's tapping on the window. I told him it was a dream, but when I checked his room, the blinds were swaying, and on the glass, smeared in the condensation, were 3 words written in a finger's trail. Rule 3. Next. My breath caught in my throat as I wiped the words from the glass, my hands trembling. Caleb clutched my shirt, his small fingers digging into my side. I forced a smile, told him it was nothing, but inside I was spiraling. Danielle was getting worse. The next morning, Caleb was silent at breakfast. He kept stirring his cereal in circles, never taking a bite. His eyes stayed fixed on the table. Finally, I crouched down and asked, "Baby, what's wrong?" He whispered so quietly, I almost missed it. "She told me if I break the rules, you'll go away. And I don't want you to go away." I swallowed hard. "Caleb, listen to me. There are no rules. Danielle doesn't get to tell you anything anymore." But he shook his head, eyes filling with tears. "She said you don't remember. She said you broke the rules before. And she said, you disappeared once already." A cold shiver ripped through me. What did that even mean? Disappeared once already? I tried to press him for more, but he just clammed up, repeating, "I don't want you to go away." That night, I locked every door, every window, checking them twice, 3 times, until my hands hurt from twisting the deadbolts. I set a chair against the front door. I put Caleb in my bed so he wouldn't be alone. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that Danielle was out there, watching. At 3 o'clock in the morning, I heard it. Tap, tap, tap on the living room window. My heart stuttered. Caleb whimpered in his sleep beside me, muttering something I couldn't make out. I slid out of bed, every muscle tight, and crept down the hallway. The tapping came again, slow and deliberate, like a child's knock during hide and seek. I peeked into the living room and froze. Danielle was outside, her face pressed to the glass, her breath fogging the pain, her smile wide and unnatural, her eyes unblinking. She tapped once more, then lifted her other hand. Between her fingers, she held something. Caleb's stuffed dinosaur. I staggered back, nearly tripping over the coffee table. By the time I gathered myself to move forward, she was gone. When I ran to Caleb's room, the toy was back on his pillow. I called the police, my voice shaking. But when they came, they found no footprints, no fingerprints, nothing. They looked at me like I was a frazzled single mom unraveling under stress. For 2 days after, I barely let Caleb out of my sight. But that only seemed to make him worse. He grew distant, speaking in whispers, humming under his breath. When I leaned closer, I realized he was repeating Danielle's rules over and over. Don't tell Mom. Open the window when she taps. If Mom stops the game, she disappears. I tried to shake him, make him see sense, but he looked at me with wide, terrified eyes and said, "If you keep fighting, she'll take me instead." That night, I didn't sleep at all. Around dawn, I dozed off in the armchair, Caleb finally asleep on the couch beside me. When I woke, the room was quiet, too quiet. His blanket was on the floor. The couch was empty. Panic surged through me. I tore through the house screaming his name, my throat raw. No answer. And then I heard it. Laughter, high-pitched, playful, from the basement. My blood turned to ice. Caleb never went down there. I ran to the basement door, yanked it open, and the sound grew louder. Not just Caleb's laugh. Danielle's voice, low and coaxing. I flicked on the light and froze halfway down the stairs. Caleb was sitting cross-legged on the cold concrete. His eyes glazed, his hands folded neatly in his lap. He was whispering Danielle's rules in a sing-song voice. And in the far corner, Crouched low with her nails digging into the wall like claws was Danielle. She turned her head toward me slowly, not in fear, but in defiance, wrapping his arms around her legs as if she were his mother. My knees buckled. For the first time, I realized she wasn't threatening to take him. She already had. When my grandmother died, I inherited her house outside of Marietta, Ohio. It was a tired old farmhouse, white paint flaking to gray, a porch that sagged when you stepped on it, windows that rattled in the wind. I thought it might be a good place for me and my son Logan to start fresh after the divorce. The mortgage was gone, the taxes low. Felt like a second chance. But the house carried a weight I couldn't shake. The smell never left. Cedar mixed with dust, undercut by something faintly metallic. My grandmother had always been secretive about it. Growing up, she locked certain doors and warned me never to explore the attic. She'd smile faintly, but her eyes would darken when she said it. Some rooms remember more than you do. On our third night there, I met him. It was just past midnight. I had been unpacking boxes when I heard the porch steps groan. Not the loose board shifting in the wind, but a measured, steady weight. Then came 3 knocks at the door. When I opened it, a man stood in the dim porch light. He was tall, wiry, his hair streaked with gray. His clothes looked clean but outdated, like something from a half-forgotten photograph. His smile was wide and easy. "You must be Renee," he said smoothly. "Your grandmother always spoke of you. I'm Gerald. I've been part of this family a long time." The way he said it, "part of this family," twisted my stomach. I didn't remember anyone named Gerald, but his tone was so confident, so certain. I froze instead of slamming the door. Against my better judgment, I let him in. He moved through the house like he owned it, fingers brushing the banister, pausing at door frames, touching the mantel. "She kept it just the way I asked her to," he murmured. I frowned. "Excuse me?" He turned back to me, smiling wider. "I helped your grandmother take care of this place. Your father, too. It's tradition. And now it's your turn." That night, I locked every door, every window. But in the morning when I came into the kitchen, there was a steaming mug of coffee waiting on the table. I don't drink coffee. Logan was still asleep upstairs. The mug was chipped, the same one my grandmother used every morning. I threw it out, but Gerald came back. He appeared on the porch while Logan played with chalk in the driveway. He stood by the clothesline while I hung laundry. Once, I stepped out of the shower and found him at the end of the hallway, calm, smiling, like he had always been there. "You don't need to be afraid," he said softly. "I'm family. I promised your grandmother I'd look after you. I promised your father, too. Now you." I told him to leave. I told him if he came back again, I'd call the police. For the first time, his smile faltered. "That's not how it works, Renee. Your family knew. They accepted me, and so will you." That night, I searched the attic. I pushed through the mothball smell and boxes of quilts until I found a trunk filled with brittle envelopes. Most were written in my grandmother's handwriting, but some were different, ink scrawled in a sharper hand. All signed with the same name, Gerald. The oldest letter was dated 1951, the newest 2 months before she died. Every one of them said some version of the same thing. "Thank you for watching over us. Thank you for keeping the promise. I'll make sure Renee continues it." My hands shook. My grandmother had planned this. Later, when I tucked Logan into bed, he stirred in his sleep and whispered words that made my blood run cold. "He told me the rules, Mom." My voice cracked. "What rules, sweetheart?" Logan rolled over, still half asleep, and murmured, "Never lock the doors when Gerald wants in. Never lie to Gerald. Never try to leave. I sat awake the rest of the night, staring at the ceiling, listening for the porch boards to groan. And just before dawn, I heard the chain of the porch swing creak. Gerald was already waiting. The porch swing rocked slowly, the chain creaking in the dawn air, his tall frame sitting with the calm of someone who had nowhere else in the world to be. I stood behind the door, every instinct telling me to grab Logan and run. But I didn't move. Something in Gerald's expression stopped me, like he already knew I wouldn't get far. When I finally stepped outside, the boards groaning beneath me, his eyes lit up. Your grandmother sat with me every morning, right here. So did your father. They resisted at first, too. But in the end, they understood. And so will you. Stay away from my son, I hissed. He tilted his head. That smile never left, but his eyes hardened. It's not me you need to worry about. It's him. I turned, heart lurching, and there was Logan, standing barefoot in the doorway. His hair was messy from sleep, his eyes still half closed, but the words he spoke chilled me. She said the same thing, Mom. Grandma told me Gerald keeps us safe. If you fight him, he'll take you away like the others. My knees nearly buckled. I grabbed Logan's arm, whispering fiercely, Don't listen to him. He's lying. Gerald rose from the swing, tall and impossibly steady. His voice was low, patient. Renee, open the trunk again. Read further back. It's all there. That night, after Logan had fallen into a heavy, dreamless sleep, I went back to the attic with a lantern. I dug deeper into the trunk until I found a journal beneath the letters. The cover was cracked, the pages yellow and brittle. The handwriting wasn't my grandmother's. It was my great-grandfather's. Gerald came again. He knows the things I've done. He says the debt is mine now. Father warned me never to refuse him. He never ages. He never leaves. If I fail, the house will take me. Every page was the same. Fear, surrender, a promise carried forward like an infection. At the bottom of one entry, a line was scrawled in shaky ink. If you are reading this, you are already his. I slammed the book shut, my breath ragged. The lantern light flickered as if the attic itself was pulsing with it. When I stumbled back downstairs, the house felt wrong, too quiet. Logan's bedroom door was wide open, empty. Panic surged through me. I called his name, my voice breaking, and then I heard it, the creak of the porch swing. I tore the front door open. Gerald sat there, and beside him was Logan. My son leaned against him, head resting on Gerald's arm as though it were the most natural thing in the world. You see, Gerald said softly, children understand better than adults. They don't fight. They accept. It's always the parents who struggle. Let him go. My voice was raw. Gerald rose slowly, his hand resting on Logan's shoulder. The boy didn't flinch. He looked at me with eyes I barely recognized. Calm, steady, almost reverent. Mom, Logan whispered. Stop fighting him. You're making it worse. Tears blurred my vision. Baby, please. Gerald stepped closer. His presence was suffocating, his shadow stretching over me. His smile widened, calm as ever. This house isn't yours, Renee. It never was. You don't inherit freedom. You inherit me. And as I stood frozen on the porch, Logan slipped his small hand into Gerald's. The swing creaked once more, as if sealing something final. And in that moment I understood. I wasn't the heir. I was the sacrifice.